Greetings and welcome to this explainer production by Pixel Pioneer, a prominent cartoon and gaming channel network, AI content creation, analytical article writer, videography, and photographer. It possesses dynamic quality for writing good articles and is a standalone, data-driven decision maker from the original sources of novels, books, and historic documentaries. And looking at those original sources today, well, what if I told you humans built a bridge higher than the clouds? Seriously. Driving across this absolute mega project feels like you're floating through the sky with literally nothing below you. Today, we're unpacking one of the most mind-boggling feats of human ingenuity on the planet. We're talking about 10,000 tons of steel hanging suspended in midair, a project that completely rewrote the rulebook on what we thought was possible.
For decades, Guizhou province in China was, without a doubt, one of the most isolated places on Earth. Millions of people lived completely cut off from the rest of the country. No highways, no fast routes. In fact, the region had absolutely no expressway until the year 2000. And the primary reason for that isolation? A monster of a gorge. It was so extreme that engineers literally looked at it and declared, nothing can be built here, ever. Every single traditional bridge design failed right there at the drawing board. But the answer to that impossible problem turned out to be 565 meters. That is how high the bridge they eventually built hangs above the river. To put that into perspective, that is taller than the Eiffel Tower. You're looking at a bridge where commercial airplanes can, and actually do, fly right underneath it. The sheer scale is kind of difficult to wrap your head around, honestly. But to really understand how they pulled this off, we have to look at the massive, unprecedented hurdles they faced. Section 1. The Impossible Gorge. Guizhou's 13-year obstacle. Now, the sheer contrast here is just staggering. Before this bridge existed, crossing this treacherous gap meant enduring 5 brutal hours of winding, highly dangerous mountain roads. The new route? It takes just 4 minutes. Just 4 minutes floating above the clouds. The Chinese government made a super bold decision to connect Zhegoa no matter the cost, to finally break this 13-year deadlock where this single gorge had stopped literally every highway plan in its tracks. So why exactly did traditional designs fail so miserably? Well, engineers spent 2 full years just studying the gorge before a single blueprint was even approved. The wind data they recorded was absolutely terrifying. We are talking about gusts reaching 140 kilometers per hour. Any normal bridge would have been instantly torn apart. It wasn't until 2011 that a genius engineer proposed a cable-stayed bridge using towers built directly onto the sheer cliff ledges. Which brings us to Section 2, Conquering the Cliffs, Building from the Edge. Construction officially kicked off in November 2011, and let me tell you, treating these cliffs like a final boss battle was really the only way forward. First, a road had to be carved directly into the cliff face using 200 perfectly calculated, controlled explosions. Because absolutely no heavy machines could fit down there, every single anchor point was hand-drilled 15 meters deep into solid bedrock. Then came the pour. 15,000 cubic meters of concrete poured continuously for each tower. They literally couldn't stop midway because even one tiny microscopic crack meant total failure. And from those cliff edges, the towers grew incredibly fast, rising 4 meters every single day. Using a self-climbing concrete form, the workers operated in these fully enclosed platforms just to prevent the brutal mountain winds from throwing them right off the edge. And the precision? It was staggering. Every single meter required a laser check. If it was even 1 degree off vertical, the whole thing would have to be scrapped. Despite temperatures dropping below 0 degrees in the winter of 2012, the work never stopped. Both massive towers were completed in just 18 months. Section 3, Threading the Sky across the 720-meter gap. So after 18 months, the giant gorge between the 2 towers was still completely empty. Installing the cables was by far the most technically complex part of the entire project. Paint a vivid picture in your mind of this, okay? A helicopter pilot hovering in 80-kilometer-per-hour crosswinds, carefully threading the very first thin steel wire across a massive 720-meter gap. The insane level of skill needed to just start connecting these 2 completed towers is breathtaking. And this brilliantly illustrates the kind of on-the-fly engineering adaptation required mid-project. Because as more cables were added, and keep in mind each one contained 109 twisted steel wires, they actually started singing in the wind. Now, this wasn't just some cool noise. It was a highly dangerous vibration that could fatigue the steel to the point of catastrophic failure. Over a single night, they implemented an elegant, brilliant solution: viscous dampers. These are essentially giant shock absorbers fitted inside every cable housing. When they tested it out, the dampers completely stopped those fatal vibrations. Over 4 months of meticulous, honestly terrifying work, they installed 112 lifelines across the gorge. Here's a catch, though. Every time a new cable was added, it changed the tension of all the others. That meant they had to tension each and every one to within 1% of its target load. It was exactly like tuning a giant, million-ton guitar. When that final cable clicked into place, the relief was so immense that grown engineers were literally hugging each other and crying right there on site. Getting to Section 4, closing the gap, down to the final 2 millimeters. Now for the most nerve-wracking phase. The deck itself had to be built outward from both towers simultaneously. If they didn't, the whole structure would tip over. Prefabricated sections were flown in by these massive cranes. As the two 565-meter-high deck arms finally approached each other in the middle, the tension was palpable. When they measured the final gap, the two ends were misaligned by exactly 3 centimeters. What followed was a grueling 18 hours of micro-adjustments, carefully altering the tension in just 12 specific cables to shift thousands of tons of steel. And the result of those painstaking adjustments? They brought the massive suspended deck alignment down to within just 2 millimeters of perfection. Really think about that for a second. Across a 720-meter gap, buffeted by extreme mountain winds, they achieved a margin of error smaller than a single grain of rice. Then, the moment of truth finally arrived. The closing piece weighed 120 tons, and it had to drop perfectly into a 120-ton shaped gap. 200 synchronized workers radioed in, all moving at the exact same moment. When that closing piece finally landed and locked in, the gorge was defeated. The workers started calling it the day the gorge disappeared forever. They completed 1,341 meters of steel deck in just 10 months. Section 5, a transformed world, defeating the gorge once and for all. But hold on, before anyone could actually drive on it, they had to prove it was completely safe. The intense testing parameters were just incredible. They drove 80 trucks, all loaded to their absolute maximum weight, onto the bridge all at the same time. The result? The deck deflected downward by exactly 45 millimeters. That was exactly perfectly what their computer models had predicted. They ran dynamic speed and vibration tests, and the real-world wind data matched their models perfectly. Years of intense research were validated in a single day, all capped off by a flawless 4,000-page final inspection report. And to ensure it stays safe for generations, the bridge has 600 embedded sensors reporting real-time health data back to a control room. Engineers literally monitor it like a patient's heartbeat because, bridges actually breathe with the temperature. And in Guizhou's specific climate, the massive steel structure expands and contracts by half a meter every single year. These sensors make absolutely sure it gracefully handles every millimeter of that movement. On December 29, 2016, the Beipanjiang Bridge officially opened to the world. On the first day alone, over 3,000 vehicles crossed. Elderly villagers who had walked those treacherous mountain paths their entire lives openly wept. It cut one local business owner's delivery time by an astonishing 97%. That isn't just progress, folks. That is absolute transformation. It completely, fundamentally changed the economic reality for millions of isolated people. They said it was impossible, and then human ingenuity found a way to build it anyway. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we can build a 10,000-ton steel bridge floating 565 meters in the clouds, what impossible obstacles in our own world are just waiting for the right breakthrough? Thank you for watching this explainer of Pixel Pioneer. Have a blessed day ahead and subscribe to our channel to get more informative explainers in the future. We will give you all the best solutions to problems and consultations based on your opinions and suggestions. Please like the channel, share, and comment if you love this explainer and inspire us for future explainer creation.